In this video, you're going to learn how to make a Mickey Mouse Rice Krispie head ears thing. What was that? Hi, it's Karolyn. In this video, like I just said, I am going to show you how I make Mickey Mouse ears for the top of a cake out of rice cereal. I do a whole little process of smoothing it out so there's no lumps underneath, and I wanted to show you how I do that. So if you want to see the exciting way that I make, it's not exciting. I mean, it is pretty cool, but it's not exciting. I'll let you know right now. Wait, why am I saying that? That really isn't selling this video, is it? So if you want to see how I make these Mickey Mouse ears, just keep on watching. Okay, so to do this, I have a glass bowl, or a bowl that you can put in the microwave, some marshmallows. I have this half sports ball pan that I believe I got from Wilton. You can use a regular bowl as well if you don't have this pan. I have some Crisco, some Rice Krispies, and I am putting this on a 6-inch cake. So I have a 6-inch cake pan just so I can make sure that I'm making this the correct size to go on top of the cake. So to start, I take some Crisco on a paper towel and I wipe it on the bowl so the marshmallows don't stick to the bowl. This is a 12-ounce bag of marshmallows. I don't really measure everything, I just kind of eyeball it. So I'm just gonna put the whole bag of marshmallows in the bowl. And I'm going to microwave this for about 1.5 minutes so the marshmallows melt. While that's in the microwave, I'm going to take some Crisco and grease the bowl as well. When the marshmallows are melted, I'm just going to stir them up a little bit. I usually do this over the sink because Rice Krispies are going to get everywhere, but I will do them on the countertop. And now I'm going to add Rice Krispies. I eyeball it until I get this to the consistency that I want it to be. I don't want it too runny, and you don't want, if you don't have enough Rice Krispies, it's going to be too marshmallowy. And if you have too many Rice Krispies, it's going to be hard and it's not going to hold together. So let's say, start with about 3 cups of Rice Krispies and stir. I definitely need more Rice Krispies. There's way too much marshmallow to Rice Krispie ratio, if you will. So I'm going to add a little more and stir. And this is a pretty good ratio. There's not too much marshmallow and there's not too much cereal. So this will be good. It'll help the cereal stick together. So it's about 4 cups of Rice Krispies to 12 ounces of marshmallows. So from here, what I do, I have this cake pan here because the top tier is going to be 6 inches. I have a 6-inch cake pan to make sure that I make this the correct size to fit on top of the cake. I have this greased bowl here. And what I'm going to do is scoop some of this I'm going to scoop some of these Rice Krispies into this bowl. So I'm going to try to round it out. This is really good to help get the Rice Krispies into a ball as well. So now I have a smaller ball for this. I'm just going to try to flatten the bottom. So I'm going to cup my hands around it and push down on the sides so I can kind of get a round top and a flat bottom here. Now you can see that this fits much better on the top on the 6-inch cake. You have to keep in mind that I'm going to cover this in buttercream and some fondant, so it's going to add a little more width to it. So you want to make sure that this will fit on top of the cake once you have it fully decorated. And I'm just going to set this aside for a couple hours so the marshmallows can cool, and then I'll be able to shape this and cover it once this is cool. Okay, now I actually let this sit out overnight, so it is pretty solid. What I'm going to do now, I have a microplane, but you can actually use a cheese grater as well. That's what I used before I had this. And I'm just going to basically shave off all of the lumps on here so it gives it a smoother surface. So I'm not going to do the bottom because that's going to be the part that's on the cake. So just doing the whole part that is going to be covered with the fondant, and it will give it a smoother surface so it won't be all lumpy underneath. So just take your cheese grater or your microplane and basically shave down all the Rice Krispies around the whole thing. And there you go, basically got all the lumps off of here. Now what I'm going to do, just smooth it out, get rid of any of the extra crumbs, and now we are ready to cover it. So now I have some black marshmallow fondant, a little bit of Crisco. On my clean counter, I'm going to, this is just out of the microwave, I warmed it up for about 30 seconds, and I'm going to roll out the black fondant. I have some cornstarch in here, sprinkle that down. Always wipe a little on top so the rolling pin doesn't stick. And I'm rolling it out to about a 1/4 inch thickness. I'm going to reshape this ball a little bit because it lost its shape as I was shaving it. So just making sure that it's still round, like a dome shape. Now I'm going to cover this with buttercream. I have some buttercream here. It is dyed peach from another cake that I iced. You can use white or a light colored icing if you already have some made. Just keep in mind, if you're covering this with white fondant and you put on a dark colored icing, you're going to be able to see it underneath. But since I'm using black fondant, you're not going to be able to tell what color icing I'm using. So I found that the easiest way to do this is with my hands. I'm going to do it over the sink. I'm going to have some warm water to smooth everything out. So I'm just going in here, taking a little bit of icing, and I'm going to start to wipe it on here. Making sure I'm covering the whole thing, and you want to make sure that you cover, I'm right-handed, so this is a little difficult to do this way. Make sure you cover all the way to the bottom. Not exactly on the bottom because that part is going to sit on the cake, but the whole way down. It's not super thick, not super thin. I don't even know how to explain that, but if it's too thick, it'll be mushy under the fondant. So you just really want a thin coat so that the fondant will stick to it. And then in order to smooth this out, once I have this totally covered, I'm gonna put on the hot water, and I'm gonna turn the sound down on this so I won't talk while I do it. I'm going to turn on the hot water and smooth it out more. You can see what I was doing in that video. I wet my hand with the water and then wiped the wet hand on here to smooth it out. I did not run it under the water, but I didn't want to talk while the water was running because it would have been too loud. Anyway, so now I have this done. I'm going to cover it with the fondant. So I'm basically pushing it the whole way down, making sure that it comes all the way down to the board. When I cut this, I'm going to cut it a little, like I'm not going to cut it all the way in because it tends to shrink a little bit. So I'm going to cut it out further away from the bottom, if this makes any sense. Just to have an idea of where the fondant is laying. So I can get rid of this extra piece. And I'll use a fondant smoother. Ugh. I film from the left and it's so hard because I'm right-handed, but I want to show you what I'm doing. I'm just taking the fondant smoother and pressing it down to the very bottom of the board. But I have to do it with my right hand. So that kind of makes a better seal. Now when I go to cut this, I'm still not going to cut all the way in because the fondant tends to lift up a little bit. I've cut it before where I cut it too close and the bottom part of the Rice Krispies were showing. So I'd rather cut it a little too big and then keep taking a little more off as needed. So just cutting a little more off, getting a little closer to the bottom. Trying to do this so you can see it without my head being in the way. So maybe I should have set the camera up a little differently. Maybe I'll do it like this. And this is sticking off the bottom a little too much, so I'm going to keep going around until I get it completely straight at the bottom. So I'm going to set this aside for an hour or two so it's easier to handle, and then I will continue. While this fondant is drying, I'm going to make the ears so the ears can sit out and dry as well. My hands are clean. I just washed them. When I roll out fondant, if you're going to be able to see the back of it, I want to make sure that the front and the back of the fondant is going to be smooth. I will show you what I'm talking about. So, if you roll out the fondant, if you're kneading it, and you roll out the fondant and you just take this and turn it over and you roll it out, the back of the fondant has all these crease marks in it. It's all ugly and gross. So if I were to take, I have this Atico circle cutter here, and if I take a circle cutter and I cut a circle out of it, say we're going to use this for the ear, look at the back of that. That looks disgusting. You don't want to use that. So the way that I make sure that this doesn't happen is when I'm kneading fondant, I always make sure that the front and back is smooth. So right here, what I do, I'm going to fold it in half. I had it like this. I'm going to fold the ugly edges into each other like that. So now the top and the bottom is smooth when I roll it out. I want to keep it a little thick. So it's probably a 1/2 inch thick. I will show you. So it's about a 1/2 inch thick. To decide what size the ears are going to be, I have this Atico circle cutter set, and what I'm going to do is just take circles and see which one that I think is a good size. Now keep in mind I'm going to cut the bottom part of the ear off, and Mickey's ears in relation to his head, when you see it, they are pretty big. So I'm going to use this one. When I take it out, I'm going to flip it over and just make sure that the edge is nice and pretty. And this is just an extra tip. I always am smoothing everything out and making sure that there are no jagged edges. The fondant is still a little pliable here, so I'm going to set it on here to dry, and then cut the other one out as well. So now I have the head and the ears. I will set these aside to dry for an hour or two before I continue. Okay, now I want to put the ears on to the head. So what I do, and I'm going to take the biggest one. So I just want to cut the bottom off of the ears so it'll contour to the shape of the head. So I'm just cutting a little bit off on both sides. I usually just take this piece and put it on top of this so I know about how much to cut off on the other one. It might be a little weird, but hey, I do. Oh, there go the neighbor's dogs. I do things a little weird, so. What I do, I try to find, and I always do this even with my cakes, I try to look at something and see where it looks the most symmetrical. Okay, so I turn it around. I feel like this side sticks out a little more than that side, so I don't want that to be the front. This side looks pretty symmetrical. So I think I'm going to make this the front and put the ears on top here. So the ears are going to go on like this. I can kind of see where they're going to go. So I'm going to take toothpicks, 2 toothpicks in each, stick it in the Rice Krispies, and then I like to take a little water on a paintbrush and just wet this bottom part. And I'm going to try to keep my head out of the way and make sure that the toothpicks are going through the very center of this and not too close to the edge, so they're going to poke out. And press this down. Ah, good. And then do the same thing for the other side. Now you want to make sure that it's lined up. Got to look at this straight on. The ears do not touch. They are a little separate. You want to make sure they look even. And I'll probably set this aside for another hour or two before I put it on the cake. So here you go. Here is your Rice Krispie Mickey Mouse ears cake topper. So what I'm gonna do is let this sit for another couple hours before I start to handle it and put it on the cake. The Rice Krispies can get a little hard, so when I stick this in the top of a cake, you always want to stick, well, you don't always have to, but I stick toothpicks underneath it to go into the cake so it won't shift around, or you can use a dowel or whatever you want, but something to stick into the cake that is going to stick into the bottom of the Rice Krispies. Does that make sense? Everything makes sense in my head, and I always say that, but when I talk, it makes sense, and then sometimes I watch it back and I'm like, that was really stupid, Kara. What are you doing? Anyway, so this is just a plain Mickey. If you want to do Minnie, obviously you would add a little bow here, and I'm actually probably going to put, I'm either going to put the name or a number 1 on here, so you can decorate this however you would like. I'm not sure what else to say about this, so if you have any questions, get back to me. I don't know where that came from. What's wrong with me? I don't know what else to say about this, but if you have any questions, leave them below and I will get back to you as soon as I can. I don't know why I grab my hands like this when I talk. It's like a weird, is it like an anxious thing? I don't know, or maybe it's because I want to flex my muscles. So if you have any questions, leave them below and I will get back to you as soon as I can. And you can follow me on social media. I am on Instagram and Facebook, and I have my website. I will link all of that below. And I really can't think of anything else. I am trying to think of a new way to end my videos instead of just saying bye. Like, oh my gosh, how annoying is that? But so I got a couple of requests. One of them from my friend Eric from high school. He told me to say, and that's what's cooking. But I don't know if that's pretty good. So we could try that, or I was thinking maybe just the wink and the gun, the classic, you know, I will see you on the next one. That probably doesn't work either. At least I think I'm funny. I crack myself up. I don't know about anyone else, but still. Okay, I think that's all for now. Follow me on social media. Everything is linked below, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!